Okay, welcome. I hope you're all well. And it's all in the moment. It's all in the present moment, right? Recognizing what is happening in the present moment and saying, "Wow, my pain is so severe right now. Thank God that there's medications that may be able to help that can decrease the pain, so that I can do other things, so that I can practice putting my attention some other place, or I can actually prepare myself a meal or get some water or something like that, right? That I can care for myself. Um, and even that, right? Even when we take the medication, it's in present moment. It's completely recognizing what we're doing and following the premise of mindfulness, of the non-judgment. Right. I think that's one of the biggest problems, or some of the biggest hindrances of, um, our actions, is the judgment that we have on them, especially things that, like pain medications or thoughts. I shouldn't be having that thought. Excuse me. Some people feel like they shouldn't be taking pain medications, right? Now, if you don't need them, excellent, right? But there might be some times when you do need them, and that's exactly what they're there for. And if you need them for longer than I thought I was going to only need them for 5 days, um, or whatever it might be, and recognizing that everybody's body is different. Everybody's body is different, and so somebody else's injury. You'll hear a lot of people saying things like, "Oh, I had that injury. I had the same injury, and I got off all of pain meds in 2 days." It's like, okay, great. Are you telling me that I should do that, or are you judging me for not doing that? Because I'm not sure we had the exact same injury, number one, and everybody is programmed differently, and so that's also the compassion that we have for each other and ourselves, and that non-judgment for not only me but you. Right? Or each other. You know, Even using your own patterns as a meditation. And what I mean by that is, where did this pattern of non self compassion emanate from? Everybody probably has something that they can go back into their childhood and try to heal, or try to be more compassionate about, or non-judgmental about, or go back to your 5-year old or 6-year old self and give them a hug or support them through a tough time. It might be one of those things that, even if you recognize, like, oh yeah, I've seen this pattern since I was 6, and go back to that 6-year-old or 7-year-old or 5-year-old or 10-year-old or 12-year-old, and just hold that person, give them a hug, give them a little pat on the back, right? Put your hand on there and be like, I'm here, everything's gonna be okay. Everything's gonna be okay. And you just put your little hand on your back. And we may all need that, to be honest with you. We may all need that. And using all the premise of mindfulness, right? Even doing something like the rain practice, for instance, where you recognize, but we use a moment in time, right, to bring up a felt sense in the present, and we're working with the present. So if there's something that happened in the past, right, that is bringing up a felt sense in the present, then we work with the present. Right? We work with that felt sense presently of what does it feel like now, and using the imagination, right, of bringing that, let's say, the 6-year-old or the 7-year-old girl back, and holding them in the present with the same compassion that you would imagine holding them now. But it's all the felt senses are in the present moment, so you keep it present. Keep it present. Today we're gonna continue our practice, And this is looking at our story. And when you think about your story, right, a lot of us have a sort of a train of thought that runs. Here's our story, right? I was born, and then when I was 3, this happened. When I was 4, this happened. When I was 5, this happened. When I was 6, this happened. And then we moved, and then we did this, and then we did that, right? And you start to see, right, how many times you've told that story to yourself, and how that story has actually been ingrained in your neuronal circuitry to create an identity. And today, what I'd like to do is see if you can observe the story but not be the story. See if you can observe the story but not be the story. See if you can notice how much has changed despite the story to your physical self, but yet how you have been aware this entire time. And how your awareness, regardless of what story you're telling yourself, has not changed, but how the story may have changed over time. And so it's really about recognizing that every time that we have a train of thought or a story that goes on, or some sort of identity with a belief, with a thought, with a past history, etc., etc., that it's really about an identity with a story that we're telling ourselves. And it's really about an identity of, as we repeat that story over and over again, we're ingraining that neuronal circuitry, and we're ingraining that energy system into our bodies. When we ingrain a certain neuronal circuitry, that creates hormones and neurotransmitters that transmit through our entire body. And it creates a certain energy frequency that we send out. Right? What we typically will attract is the energy frequencies that are similar. So if we are constantly finding ourselves that, for instance, we're interacting with people that might be anxious, or we're interacting with people that might be depressed, or we're interacting with people who might be addicts, or we're interacting with people whose energy we feel like, wow, I'd rather not interact with this person. Right? A lot of times that's actually when the judging comes up, and it's sort of like, oh, you're this, or you're that, or you're that. But instead, just looking at it as an energy frequency, and looking at ourselves and asking ourselves, well, what energy frequency am I transmitting to the world? And the energy frequency that we are transmitting to the world is the energy frequency usually that is more predominant at that time. And this is created by our thoughts, emotions, actions, everything. And a lot of time it's created by our stories that we keep on repeating to ourselves over and 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 over again. And in a way, do you know what that is? That is addiction. That is addiction to a certain state of being. Right? Now, if you like that state of being, it's perfectly fine. If you feel like you are resonating at a frequency that you feel abundant, that you feel limitless, that you feel free and at peace, then that's perfectly fine. right? But if you don't like, if you're looking at yourself and you're saying, wow, I have this and I have this and this is going on and this is going on, this is going on, we can pay attention to what's happening in the present moment, right? And seeing, right, can we spend time, as opposed to identifying with the story itself, with all the stories that we have told ourselves about who we are, can we rest and see, can we be the observer or the witness of the story? Can we be aware of the story that we're telling ourselves and see what happens? Where maybe there's a point in our life where we do feel like we're absolutely identified with the character in the story. But as we do this practice, right, we recognize that there's actually a character in the story. And that character is who I have identified myself to be, but that's not actually me. So it's almost as if a good way of looking at this would be as if you're entering into a room and you sit down. And then in front of you, somebody projects a movie of your life. And you're watching the movie of your life as the observer, as a pure witness. And you can watch the movie and you can see how much change there is. Right? And you can recognize, oh, I remember that birthday party, or I remember that interaction, and in that present moment, that's how I felt, but that was then. And I was aware, but that wasn't me, because look at all this change that happened over time. Okay, so in today's practice, essentially, can we become the observer of the story? Can we become the witness of the story? Can we recognize, first of all, that there is this story that we're sort of telling ourselves that may be so ingrained in our neuronal circuitry that we can't even separate our awareness from the story itself. So like, okay, well, I am the story. This is my story. Or am I the awareness of all these stories that are happening? Okay. And so that's the practice that we're going to do today. Okay, so let's find a comfortable posture. A posture you feel relaxed yet alert. Closing your eyes if you feel comfortable closing your eyes. If not, having a soft downward gaze as you're gazing off on the horizon. And taking 2 or 3 deep breaths, and with each inhale, bringing in the present moment as best you can. And then breathing regularly at whatever pace works for you. And bringing your attention to your resource a place that you can direct your attention to that you feel safer. Where you choose to pay attention to. And noticing as your mind wanders, or maybe other thoughts, sensations, emotions come and go. You're choosing to pay attention to your resource, your anchor. And simply allowing everything else to just be, just pass. Like clouds moving in the sky. Now from this place of resource, bring to mind a story about yourself, a memory, a goal, an identity, a fear, anything, a story about yourself, and hold it lightly in your attention. If it gets too intense, you can always go back to your resource. Holding this story lightly, ask yourself, to whom is this story arising? To whom is this story arising? To whom is this story arising? And see what you notice. Letting the question echo in your mind, to whom is this story arising? And if you can, noticing the story appearing in awareness. It is not who you are. Noticing the story appearing in awareness. It is not who you are. And asking yourself, am I this story? Or am I the one aware of it? Am I this story? Or am I the one aware of it? Notice and feel into the space of awareness that is beyond the story, that is prior to the story emerging. Feel this space throughout your entire mind, body, spirit of pure awareness, and let the story dissolve into that. Ask yourself, am I the story? Or am I aware of the story? Feel into the space of awareness that is beyond the story, that is prior to the story. Let the stories dissolve into this awareness. Being the knowing presence that remains. Pure awareness, limitless, timeless, spaceless. Resting here, and from this place, gently returning to your breath, noticing your whole body breathing. Directing your attention back to your anchor or resource. Taking 2 or 3 deep breaths. Opening your eyes if your eyes were closed. Reorienting yourself to your room and surroundings. Feeling your feet on the floor or whatever surface they're on. Stretching or moving if you need to stretch. And just reflecting on your practice today.